Yeah, thank you, Bridget. Thanks, everyone. Hand on heart, I know very little about the PSDI. It's a new thing. I'm a member of the advisory board, but I haven't actually done very much with it. Um, this is presented to you really as a beta project, and the question of how we might want to use it as a community, or what sort of things we might want to do. Come on. Right, so here's the presentation outline. I don't think I've got to do any of the talk comments on the graphic, but a little introduction to PSDI, a little sampling of what we've currently got, and then hopefully an invitation to get involved with it and see what it's all about. Unlike Tim's talk before, which was really about focusing on tracking the pathways through a metadata framework, which is great. This one takes a slightly backseat approach, and it comes out of a community need. And it's run by the University of Southampton and the STFC in the UK. It's essentially open. The first launch of resources is now live on the website. And really, this is an invitation to explore that. It is open for international users, and most resources are fully open, but obviously some won't be. I can't tell you which ones those are, unfortunately. But essentially, what's driven this need, right? So this is focused on data and in a slightly broader perspective than maybe Tim's talk. So we're looking at this idea that we need to get to data to be reusable and interoperable. So we're looking towards fair data, but there are things that hinder that. And that's quite often, data is locked away in funny proprietary formats, or you take reflectivity data off a analytical machine or a neutron facility, or they're all slightly different, and they're all annoyingly slightly different. There's not a lot of metadata. There's costs of storing that data as well. Now, the PSDI is not proposing to act as a data repository, but how we store data and what data we store was one of the drivers. There's not enough standards in general on data and how we look at it. There's complexity across standards. There's a lack of interoperability maybe between the analysis software, the data collection software. They're all slightly different. And then not only do we have to worry about the data and the technology, it's also people. And one of the biggest problems is probably people. Like, how our attitude towards data and fair data is variability, and almost a lack of skills. I mean, a lot of what Tim was talking about is very good, but for someone with a little brain like me, it's quite confusing. We need to upskill ourselves, and how do we upskill ourselves towards all that? So everything within PSDI is driven by data. So we're looking for platforms of data collection and sharing. How can we support analysis across experimental data, and how do we access reference data? How do we combine existing data infrastructures, not necessarily into a single infrastructure, but at least a single portal to access those infrastructures? And one of the things that is also quite important is this last term. So for many of us as academics, we have a PhD student, we have a project, that project runs, and then what happens to that data beyond the lifespan of that research project? So Tim mentioned it in terms of, okay, what do we do with data that isn't published? It's in the prerogative of the PI to look at that. But this one is sort of like taking that same idea and going, okay, this project is finished, but what are we doing with the data from that project, and how do we keep that interoperable and accessible? So there are 4 basic principles, and this is a short list of where we are. trying to connect existing infrastructures, making the best use of our data, the best use of the technology, and the best people. So there's a focus on the metadata and data management at the moment, looking at scientific workflows. But there are examples within PSDI of a few things. Reflectometry is not there yet, but it could be. And one of the questions from today is, should it be? How could it be? So that's a question. These are the initial features that we've got. So we've got a common catalog for experimental simulation and long tail data. How do we catalog that? How do we combine data from different sources? So we've got data from a synchrotron, we've got data from lab, we've got modeling data. How do we combine all that into something that's usable? How do we access reference quality data? How do we compare our data against references? And also, how do we build the knowledge base for training and guidance? So those are the sort of like the core structures that underpin the PSDI infrastructure, and its availability on the website is there. And these are the sorts of things that are available. So if you log on to the website, each one of these will pop up. And within those, there are various options that I encourage you to explore. As I say, they are in beta test. So some may work, some may not work. I was quite excited by the data revival service, and then I tried it. So it looks lovely. This is a beautiful flow. I mean, we've all got lab books that we've scribbled in over the years, and wouldn't it be nice if that was transferable to some sort of machine readable content? I tried a page and it returned gobbledygook. Either my handwriting is appalling or the beta test isn't quite there. So, I mean, I think this is something that would be really useful, and I think as a community we would benefit by providing some more input and help to that. There's also data format conversion processes. So again, you can put in a particular type of format and want to export to another type of format. There are links to those sort of conversion programs. The idea here is that everyone doesn't have to write the same data conversion. So if we have data conversion processes that we want to make more available, then again, we can upload them for the wider community to use. So these were just a couple of the examples. As I say, some work, some are less good. But if we keep engaging with the thing, we can improve it. It's not us just about technology. It is about community. So there are a whole load of things that all fold into this data program. And I think that one of the important parts of us as a community is to make sure that we try and build on some of these so that we can do things like share it, the best practice. We can develop standards. We can have a common idea of what we need. We can have advocacy for metadata. We can have advocacy for fair data and processes. So again, it's a portal for which we can build some of that together. This is again some of the content and the guiding principles of the guidance and training basis. So again, it's about case studies and it's about putting in some training programs and that we can contribute to those training programs. And this is a central portal where people will go to access those training programs. And of course, PSDI can link to Daphne. It can link to the DAISY portals. We're not trying to replace them, but at least having a community-centered position from the UK that we can access them would be good. These are the sorts of ideas. So if you've got ideas on any of these sorts of things, then please reach out and speak to the team. There's an email address here. Anything that you could think of, we can do webinars, we can interact with people. So if you've got a presentation that you're ready to give and you're prepared to give, then I'm sure that we can send that and we can expand and extol the virtues of data to our colleagues. So this is the last slide I put together for ORSO. I mean, I think one of the things we're very good at is if we take reflectivity at a central facility. But if you're doing neutrons or even just experiments, you're going to do some lab-based X-ray reflectometry as well. So how do we maintain open access to lab-based reflectometries. What opportunities are there in different systems to bridge those gaps? What tools do we need to bridge everything? How do we reuse one tool for one domain to help another one? Maybe we could also make more use of the ORSO SLD database. We could link that directly as a resource on PSDI. Looking at conversion toolkits, there's lots of different software coming out of central facilities, and then you arrive at a fitting program that wants a 2-column ASCII format. So how do we manage that makes sense? What about our training? Can we put some specific training and metadata needs? And then, really this managing our research programs beyond our individual PhD projects, making sure that that's all ticked off. There you are. That's the QR code for those of you that are all hip and with it. For the rest of us, I would just type PSDI into Google. So yeah, that's me done.